Sir.
I think this is where I'm supposed to. Is it
That's further down.
further down?
One more over right here, and then I think,
The next one.
yeah, sit next to you there.
Right here. Good training places or?
Yeah. Reminded.
Well, I usually sit.
Okay, ran out of time. I was gonna call you and see if you were gonna slide some pizza.
You didn't see the note that they're having food, huh?
Well, there was something in, when they sent out the agenda, that said they were gonna have some.
Get all of my. Oh.
Well, it says that they bought enough for us too, so.
Great, okay.
Anybody?
Had a really good bargaining meeting, but these, we're gonna.
Thank you.
get contracted
Three.
soon.
Oh, do you need parking validation?
Yes. Cause I'll just.
The higher expensive, not so much.
These go down. Yeah.
How much of a priority is having?
I see you all have
I did not
parking.
hear you.
The idea, because I'm in the room. I like the idea. Ernest said don't go too far away, so I've heard of that, and I am respecting. I'm respecting that. I'm trip hazard.
It got me off the waiting list, so I had a spot in Market Street Garage. I was thrilled.
Sandwich too? It is. You're welcome.
Realize they were back to having a waiting list there.
Yeah, I think, yes, that's considered the most desirable because the closest to City Hall.
Right.
Meetings and nights.
Sit in front of me.
Hi, Catherine.
Hello. Oops, there's the trip hazard. Sorry about that.
Selling for the first meeting.
And so when.
Hi.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Challenge from the start.
No, no.
Trip hazard.
If anybody comes through, I will. Do not.
I'm thinking she's on.
Yeah.
I chatted with her earlier in the week. She's gonna make it. She's
No,
kinda got-
I almost asked that question, like,
Yes, this is.
I would like to know, because I would like to eat now.
My entire day.
Strategy.
No, I don't.
I
Actually, I think it'll be all raining.
You do.
Something
I
about-
think it's gonna be raining nightly.
That washed away, and now we're talking. Yep, see, there we go.
Press. She's been working. Housing coalition or housing something, or it's a state group that seems to.
Oh, there's a cedar. Okay.
on these issues, so.
There's a seat here and a seat here.
I am.
I have not heard from anyone that they would not.
You know,
There used to be a chat about the land bank, so yes, there's a spectacle probably
Yep.
dump something at their next meeting. Come talk to y'all about it.
I'm fine with that. If they want to-
We had one at Chesapeake. I don't
And
think-
Caroline, we are anticipating,
Housing one.
Commissioner Angela Estes, who's new commissioner, to participate in.
Dynamic, but
She may show up as a, participant and you can promote her to a panelist. That would be really helpful.
hardly a panacea.
Thank you.
Angela Estes.
That's correct. Thank you.
This seat? No, oh, sorry, don't slow, oh, yes. Now we should be okay.
Yeah, I believe she should be on her way as well. Jay, you heard anything from?
I have not. I had chatted with Katrina though earlier in the week and she indicated that she was coming and had prepared some materials, so.
She may be making her way over still.
For another, she's right on time and
Should we go ahead and start?
I think so. I think we can go ahead and start and then we'll make some.
Right.
Session.
Extra.
Well, good evening. We'll go ahead and call this Human Rights Commission work session into order at 6:32 p.m. Welcome everyone. We do our roll call.
Ernest.
I am present.
And Jeanette, I do not see. Mary,
Here I am.
great. Wolfgang,
Present.
Catherine,
Present.
Suzanne,
Here.
Andy,
Here.
and Charlie.
You're
Welcome.
welcome, Joe.
And do we have Angela on? Yes.
Not yet.
Okay.
All right. Oh, we don't have our.
I know we don't have.
All right, so if you have your agenda, if you will look as we do recite our mission together.
Catch up and open.
And
Here.
everybody okay?
We know it.
Do you have it memorized?
We know it.
Okay, we got it. All right,
Yeah.
let's do our mission. 1, 2, 3. Act as a strong advocate to justice and equal opportunity by providing citywide leadership and guidance in the area of civil rights. All right. I also want to make sure we make a notice to members of the public that are participating virtually. We have been experiencing difficulties virtual, so if you may call in at 434-970-3151. And a staff member will assist you. That is 434-970-3151.
I'm gonna make a quick correction. 3115.
3115, sorry.
Yeah.
434-970-3115. All right. So I want to welcome everyone on tonight. I want to welcome our new commissioners that are fulfilling spots that were left vacant by commissioners who have decided to step down. That is Angela Estes and Charlie Burton. So Charlie, we welcome you here. Angela hopefully will be joining us virtually. She is out of town. So I look forward to meeting you guys real soon, hopefully before our regular scheduled meeting, the third Thursday in this month. We've done our motto. Who is in the room? Well, if you look, we have our city manager, Mr. Jay Stromer here. City attorney, Mr. Jay Stromer here. We have our outgoing mayor, but still councilor, Mr. Lloyd Snook with us, and hopefully on her way, deputy city attorney, is that correct?
Yes, and
delegate. And incoming delegate, Katrina Colson, with us as well, going to be with us as well. So tonight, we want to spend some time, and Happy New Year to our commissioners. Glad you guys are here. Thank you for being here. And also Susan, thank you for fulfilling your term, being back on the commission.
Yes,
Back
back here.
Yeah, back here.
Yes,
So thank you.
you're welcome.
Tonight, we want to, there have been some the council annual legislative process per Charlottesville Human Rights Ordinance. One of the roles for us as a commission is to provide and recommend to the council regarding the city's annual legislative program, with the emphasis on enabling legislations that may be needed to implement programs and policies that will address discrimination, which is one of the codes in the Charlottesville codes that several commissions have recommended for the year. We'll be lucky enough that the council has adopted some to send to the legislators. So I want to pass this over to Mr. Lloyd Snook to talk about what council has done, and then he will probably pass it over to Attorney Jay Strobel.
Well, thank you. The process that we go through is, obviously, we want to make sure that we get to our delegate and our state senator a legislative agenda in time for them to do something with it, which as a practical matter means we're shooting for the beginning of December, since the term starts in January. And we have to give the legislators time to, among other things, get the bills submitted to the folks who actually draft them, legislative services, and then to be able to pre-file them and get them on the docket of the various subcommittees. You don't start filing bills or sending bills to your delegates in the middle of the session. That's just too late. So we had collected various comments and suggestions from people over the course of the year. And of course, one of the letters that we got was the letter from this body. And let's see, it was dated September 22nd. Appreciate the fact that it came in nice and early and gave us a chance to think about it a little bit. So there were, of course, other things that we were working on all the time as well. One of the things that we tried to do this year, which is a little different from prior years. In prior years, we would submit about a 10-page list. Nobody has time or the ability to focus on 10 pages worth of different legislative requests. And so we last year, for the first time, had distilled everything down into a 1-page submission of our top 8 or 9, I think it was, priorities. And that was, I think, very helpful to our legislators to know what things were there that we actually wanted them to be investing political capital in. What were the most important things? Not merely, if this one comes by your desk, vote for it, but rather, what are the things that we really want you to be spending your time on? And so that was sort of our goal in coming up with it wound up being almost 2 full pages, but there was a lot more text of explanation of these than we had the year before. The single most important priority that we feel that the city has legislatively is to expand the option for a 1 cent local sales tax increase for construction and renovation of public school facilities. That's the way that we're going to be able to take the next step. We've already funded Buford, but the next step to fund the what's going to happen both at Walker and at each of the elementary schools is something that at this point, we don't know where that money is coming from, except that we know we won't have it until at least 2027. That's too late. It's important that we find a way to get those projects going earlier. And the only way we were going to do that is to get this sales tax increase. The other thing that would happen, we would have to work at and to look at this kind of, if and when it gets passed, is it may be possible to basically take some of the money that is now being covered through bonds for Walker to move it over and have some of that Walker money paid for out of this taxing. The point is that it allows us to do the things that we need to do on a schedule that's a reasonable schedule. That doesn't leave half of ours, or really the first 5 years, 6 years of our schooling for our kids in schools that are not adequate. And so that's our single most important priority. And what I told the legislators last year, and I'll tell them again this year, is that if there is anything I want you investing your political capital in, it's that. The other issues that we've designated, there's some, for example, continuing from the funding the Virginia's home visiting programs it's a simple problem that we know that these funds are going to decline unless something is done, and that's an important one. The next item up is salaries for members of local governing bodies. Frankly, I don't care very much about that, but other folks on council do. Trina, I think this seat is for you. Come on up.
My apologies, I spoke to Mr. Stroman, I had an event in Richmond, so I was driving.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Made it safe.
We'll just have to blame Richmond.
That's right.
We blame Richmond for everything else.
That works for me.
Actually, we're just talking generally about the legislative priorities, so your
Yeah.
time is perfect.
And what I had just finished saying to them was that I will say to you all this year, as I said to everybody, to Sally and to Cree last year, that the single most important issue for us is the 1 cent sales tax increase. And if there's anything to invest your political capital in, it is that.
Yes. And
So,
I'm happy to listen, and I'm also happy to provide what information I do have about these priorities and how they're
Yeah.
going along.
and so there, as I said, I am less concerned about salaries for members of local governing bodies than others. Some people regard it as important to be able to give people who do not have other jobs a chance to serve on the local governing bodies. If that passes, that's fine. It doesn't automatically increase the salaries. Council would then have to take further action. It would just allow us to take further action. Funding for regional transit authorities. This is in many ways an equity issue because the only way we're going to be able to afford the significant increase in our transit capabilities that we know that we need is if we can establish this sort of transit authority that would involve some kind of commitment of taxing authority or even a commitment, even as just a commitment from the localities to somehow or another, we would come up with another $10 million, however we want to do that. Now Borough would come up with another however much money they would need. But we know that an important part of our affordable housing scheme is to to factor in both the cost of the rent and the cost of the transportation to your job. That you can't look at only one and not the other. And
So one question on, it says 1 cent local sales tax increase, is that in addition to the first one, or is that all coming from the same pot of money?
well, it would be an additional 1 cent sales tax. So in theory, it could be 2 cents worth, but it could also, I mean, there are a lot of ways it can be done. It would not have to be a full 1 cent, for example, but it might need to be. And one of the things that would happen is if we put 1 cent towards schools and 1 cent towards regional transit, we might then cut a certain amount from the regular tax.
I'm just concerned as, sales tax is typically considered more regressive.
Yeah,
If there's other ways to fund some of these.
yeah.
Items that are not sales tax based, that would be.
Sales tax, of course, the governor is now talking about increasing sales taxes himself, while decreasing income taxes. So, and see what we want to make of that. The problem that we're sort of limited in that there are only a few kinds of taxes that we actually have any authority over, and sales tax is one of those. And roughly 1 cent on a sales tax right now we figure is about $12 million. And that happens to line up pretty closely with the amount of money that we think we would need to make transit work.
Is that per year, Lloyd?
Yeah. And so anyway, then we move on to something that is near and dear to Jay's heart. The General Assembly this past year did something we think inadvertently that just kind of confuses lots of city attorneys and mayors and other people about how exactly we're supposed to proceed with some notice requirements. That's probably going to be done, and I suspect there's not going to be a lot of opposition to the change.
There's a
Yeah.
fix that appears very
Yeah.
favorable.
Then the next one may be important to you all. Right now, our Freedom of Information Act basically prohibits all virtual meetings. Now that the crisis of COVID is over, there are many groups that have found it useful to have all virtual meetings, or at least to have meetings where you don't have to have a quorum, a physical quorum present in one location. And so there may be some change in that. Then the part that embraces some of y'all's legislative agenda is the affordable housing accessibility by enhancing tenant rights. Some of these things were specifically things that we had worked into the affordable housing plan passed 2 years ago. We did not, frankly, as we looked through your list of things, we chose some things that we thought would be easier to get than some others, recognizing that of course, at the time we were drafting this, we were still looking at a Republican, the time that you all were drafting it, we were responding to it initially. We were still looking at a Republican majority in the House. We now have a Democratic majority in the House. We still have a Republican governor. We have to be somewhat realistic. And as we tried to draft a combination of positions here, we tried to keep in mind some sense of what we thought might be politically doable. This is not a statement that we reject the other things you have asked for, but simply a recognition of things that I think are possibly doable. I will add that the provision under which we made G1, amending the Landlord Tenant Act to allow tenants to raise unsafe or unsanitary conditions as an affirmative defense to non-payment of rent. When I was in law school in Michigan, I worked for the legal aid office up there, and there we called the term partial constructive eviction. And partial constructive eviction meant that you had a right to get a credit against your due rent for the amount by which the landlord had not lived up to all of their obligations. So you didn't have to flat out move and quit or start putting up your entire rent into escrow or any of the other things, but it was allowed as an affirmative defense. And so when I saw you all suggesting that, I thought, yeah, right on. I remember that from 40 years ago. Anyway, so these are the things that we had put into our specific short list. I will also tell you that we have a longer list that we sent along as well, that the TJPDC legislative program that is about 10 pages long. I don't know if there's much of that is of great interest to you all, and rural broadband, for example, is probably not a high concern for this body. But there are some, I will just note, if anybody looks at the TJPDC legislative program, you will see that there are two places in particular where Charlottesville dissented. One was they wanted to maintain the principles of sovereign immunity for local government. And we dissented, saying, no, we think sovereign immunity ought to go. That's still a legislative position of ours. The second legislative position that they took that we disagree with, they say we oppose legislation mandating expansion of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act's coverage area. Instead, we would like to have that coverage area increased. Other than that, the TJPDC legislative program is what it is. So that's sort of my overall view of things.
Thank you, sir. Any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Snook? All right. Okay.
It would be appropriate now to perhaps hear from Ms. Council.
Yeah,
If you're ready.
yeah, I can jump in. I'm doing a lot of things on the fly now. So I'm good. Yeah, I'd be happy to jump in and happy to, the good news is there's a lot happening. There's a lot of really eager Democrats right now. I was just meeting with a whole bunch of them, and I had the opportunity to talk with a lot of them about things that they have in the pipeline, and I'm happy to share that with you. In terms of G, I put in for drafting all 4 parts of G, and then I started working them and seeing where we stood. And I'm happy to tell you that. So Delegate-elect Ray Cousins is going to be doing something around one. Her specifically, which I'm happy to share with you, actually printed off a draft of what she had, but she's gonna be putting in, and it's an escrow account type thing, and this was a conversation from 2 hours ago that I have not had a chance to review it all. I knew that she was doing, but I had to get a copy of what she was doing, and she sent me that along with the amendments, but it's a VRLTA escrow bill that would allow tenants to basically not have to pay their rent while they're pursuing, or, trying to get fixes for the places that they're living. I think she'll be a good advocate for that. She's working with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. I've met with Virginia Poverty Law Center, and they're pouring a lot of resources into getting that passed. So that's in a good place.
Can I ask a question about that specifically?
Jump
When
in.
you say escrow, you mean that some people would have to pay money into the court system? Is that instead of withholding money?
I am gonna say I have not had a chance to read it other than to scan, so I can literally just say what the section I saw said, which yes, it was that they would pay into escrow, but it at least would allow a ability for them to get their money back. Which you're hinting at a bigger issue, which is that the whole system, so I've been meeting with Virginia Poverty Law Center. I'm sure you guys are well aware that the whole system it needs a lot of work in Virginia. It needs a lot of work. Even some of these, like the waiver of the appeals bond, which that's the next one. So that one I met with Virginia Poverty Law Center. They requested that I hold off on that one because they think sequentially it should happen after we make reforms to the process, because otherwise indigent clients are not pursuing appeals because the process, they're still required to pay the rent while they're doing it. And so she said, and I asked her, what do you guys want to see that has the highest likelihood? And she said, we would like to do this and pour advocacy into these pieces. And there's other pieces that I'm not aware of. And then we'll work town halls and get advocacy behind waiving the appeal bond, which is the second piece. And I think I will be the patron of that next session. And jump in with questions, because I'm discovering it too, and I can have these conversations on y'all's behalf too when I'm talking to people.
I would just say, I think requiring indigent individuals to pay money into the court is extremely ineffective. I've worked for, 15 or 20 years at Legal Aid, and I had a handful of people in that time who were able to do that, given how onerous the process is. So
yeah, and Christy, who I was talking
Christy
to,
Mara?
at
Yeah.
the Virginia Poverty Law Center, had a phrase which, because it's late and it's been a really long day, I can't remember it. It's almost a farce. It's not really the appeal system. It doesn't really exist.
It's not accessible to most individuals. It's just too onerous a process to have to go through that. So if there is another way to achieve that, I would strongly recommend that.
Yeah, well, the optimistic thing is Christy has a legion of delegates working with her or trying to pass this, and she's really invested in it, and she's got a pathway that she's moving forward, and I'm in that conversation now, and I'm happy to bring y'all's experience with me when we're going. So
Great.
Ray Cousins doing that one. I'm probably gonna do 2 next year in sequentially after they do the other things that they're doing. 3, requiring landlords to disclose a complete list. That looks like it's set to fly. I don't want to promise anything. I can't promise anything, but that one's a good one. I mean, it's transparency. It's hard to argue against transparency. It's being carried by Kathy Tran, who's going to be an effective advocate. She's, not speaker, not leader, chair of the caucus right now. 4, authorizing localities to pass rent stabilization ordinances. That's being carried by Nadarius Clark. Co-patroned by Adele. Nadarius has been working it for over a year. He actually introduced similar legislation last year. He's taken those, continue to meet with stakeholders throughout the year, and he's carrying that piece. I'll be co-patrons on this, but I'm not going to be the patron of these ones, although I did put them in for drafting, but I'm not going to file them just to say I filed them when there's other people who are passionate. Also have a really quickly, I sought out some information about other things that were happening. So Truth in Renting Act is Delegate Tran, also being carried on the Senate side, Senator Boysko.
Truth in renting, I like that.
It's all about the naming. That's what they're calling the transparency, truth in renting. Prohibition of fee for maintenance calls, which prohibits landlords from charging a fee for responding to requests for maintenance, unless the maintenance is in response to damage caused by the tenant. That's being carried by Delegate Tran and Senator Evan. 14-day pay or quit is being carried by Delegate Price. That increases the time during which a tenant can pay late rent and prevent the filing of an eviction case from 5 to 14 days. As I'm saying, there's a lot of good things happening. We'll see where they get. And they're trying to be very sensitive to the fact that there's still a Republican governor. So I'm trusting their expertise with how they they move forward. I'm not gonna talk much more longer, I promise. Next one, eviction expungement, is carried by Delegate Hope, Patrick Hope. And he's head of courts, I think, or general courts, so that's a good one. He clarifies the timeline for expunging unlawful detainer cases that have been dismissed or non-suited and makes expungement automatic. Currently, expungement is available for those cases, but has to be done by petition, which, as we talked to before, I mean, using the legal system to achieve your means is usually out of reach for people that aren't lawyers. Anti-rent gouging, that's what they're calling the rent stabilization, that's Delegate Clark, Senator Boysko, and limits on attorneys' fees awards is being carried by Senator Stanley. That requires attorneys seeking a fee shifting order from a court to file an affidavit detailing the work done. I'm reading this verbatim, and puts elements of the legal ethics rule regarding attorney's fee into Virginia code. I had a longer conversation with her about that. That's like a nuanced little piece that I guess attorneys can really overcharge when they're doing these eviction cases, and it can become problematic. So those are just some of the exciting things that are happening. On my end, I'm putting in a bill, I'm co-patroning a bill that's really just a tiny little chunk, but it's a study about single stair, which I don't know if you have heard. Yeah, so single stair, I met with some housing groups locally, and that was one that they were championing. It's a development code thing that makes it really hard to develop, or makes it more cost prohibitive to develop affordable housing units because you have to put in multiple staircases, and there's other ways that you can provide safety.
Yeah, it allows for more efficient unit layouts and I'm an architect, but.
Yeah, and there's other states that, yeah, there's other states that do it, and there's other ways that you can have safety. And just as of a few hours ago, after I was talking to Ray Cousins, I'm gonna take a bill from her that is, it's about tenant screening and having to provide a reason when you reject someone from an apartment. So that's one that I'm gonna be patroning as of like 2 hours ago. So I need to read it. It's being worked by an advocacy group, and it's already been worked, so it's in a good place. In fact, I have the whole like white page here, but all that is a long way to say that there's a lot of people focused in on housing right now. There's a lot of people who've been doing the work for a long time. I'm really excited to join the conversation. I'm sort of the new person, so they're helping me along. I've been in contact with a lot of organizations. They know that I've told every single one of them that it's one of the top concerns of my constituency base. And so I'm starting to get in the mix. So these are the bills I have. That's information I have about where they are and what I can help them with and what we can help them with. My last piece, which maybe y'all know, is that, and I doubt y'all need to attend it or would want to attend it, but the Virginia Poverty Law Center is having a housing advocacy class this Sunday, January 8th, and I'm happy to share that information. And I guess they're going to talk about ways that you can do advocacy around these issues as they move forward in the next 2 years with the Democratic majority. So those are the housing bills, and I don't want to take all your time with my other bills because I have other bills that are, you know, foster care and the sales tax and things like those.
Will that program be in person or virtual? Do you know?
Let me send you, I did not print it out, so let me forward it. I'm happy to forward the email I have to all, just to the group.
Because we're supposed to get some snow, so I was wondering.
I think it's virtual. I saw
On
that.
Saturday, not on Sunday.
Is it on Saturday?
Yeah, Sunday is supposed to be clear according to.
Oh, the
to-
sun, the
It's
snow,
snow,
the snow,
right.
yeah.
Yes, so just, yes, if you can find that out for us, that somebody might have some interest in
Yeah, it should be good.
sitting in on that.
And I should just say, I'm happy to be a partner with you guys. Hopefully I can attend more meetings. Because there are other things that I'm working on that probably touch upon a lot of the work that you guys are doing. Like I said, foster care, a lot of local government issues. And you're catching me again at the end of the day where I'm trying to remember my bills all from there, but it's an area of interest for me, is making sure that people are served well and that they can live happily, freely with the resources they need to get by. So, criminal justice reform. I'm doing a lot of criminal justice reform. This is great.
Could you talk about that
Thank you.
just a little bit? Like what are the priorities there?
Yeah, so for criminal justice reform, I have 3 bills in. The one that I'm most excited about is a probation reform bill that would allow probation to be shortened by up to 90 days for achieving certain things, credentials, going back to school, working. It's already drafted. I have a lobbyist that's working with me. It's actually, interestingly enough, I think there are 2 musicians who are really pushing this. They've done it in other states, and it's actually passed in Republican states. It's passed in states that have Republican governors and Republican, because it makes sense. I mean, that's the point of probation. That's what we want to see out of the criminal justice system, is that people reintegrate into society. It's hard to argue against that. And so why not encourage them to get whatever they can out of the program and then reduce their time. So that's the one I'm most excited about. The other two come from the Virginia trial lawyers. There's an acronym of some other group that they meet all year. It includes defense lawyers, it includes prosecutors, it includes judges. And so they carefully vet the bills and they come to a consensus on them.
Crime Commission?
No, it's like a seven
No.
a 7-letter acronym of things, but
Okay.
prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges. Joe Platini approached me about 2 of the bills that they are doing, and I'm carrying them. They all,
Wood Graves Conference perhaps?
it is something maybe related to that.
All right.
Yes, that's ringing.
That's
some bell.
usually-
Y'all-
I don't know.
So one of them is about, and so, yeah, I can be really open with that. They're not the most progressive because they've been vetted and approved by all stakeholders. That's good for this session because the governor's tough on crime. And if you're gonna get anything approved, it needs to be something that you can say, there's been a lot of work and there's still good steps forward. One is about reducing the automatic felony that you get for residual amounts of drugs. Progressive prosecutors try to get around that by charging things like drug paraphernalia, which isn't actually what fits the crime because you have to do a felony right now. And so what this would do would make it so that at the discretion of the prosecutor, it can be dropped to a misdemeanor. The non-progressive enough for me that I struggle with is I would love for it to be also at a motion of the defense attorney would be nice, but that apparently killed the bill when that was mentioned, and I don't think the governor will sign that. So we're gonna go with now at least allowing the prosecutors the chance to make it misdemeanor instead of a felony. And with the hope that, prosecutors are elected in Virginia, so they have to answer their constituent base if they're doing crappy work, or sorry, they're doing bad work. So felony, misdemeanors, and then the other one is our first time offender program. So we have first time offender rehabilitation programs that we offer for drug cases. Right now, if you have any prior marijuana conviction, that's considered a first time, you no longer qualify for the services. That's first time offense. I don't think that's aligned with the current thoughts around marijuana is legal now. So having offense for marijuana that's 10 years old shouldn't really prohibit someone from accessing drug rehabilitation services if they need them. So it's expanding that. So those 2, and I'm hoping those ones will. I've been told it's hard to even get one bill passed. I believe that. I've had many people tell me, but those are well vetted bills. Joe is being very helpful. And he's a great resource. And I actually just met with an attorney today to talk about it a little bit more. Mark Wicks, I want to say. So those 3 pieces. And then I put in for drafting also a thing about redoing pleas, but I don't think I'm gonna have space to carry that because I'm building the plane as I'm flying it, guys, and I'm working. I got like 10 bills. I'm hoping I can advocate well for all of those and then grow from there.
If I may, Chair, in our office, Katrina has been for several years an expert on juvenile and domestic relations law and has a great interest in issues in that space, strengthening families, foster care, and I think that might be an area of legislation as well.
Yes, that's right. So when I first started, we still didn't know if we'd have the majority, and I was really told focus on your strengths. Because everything is so new. You're literally meeting everyone. You don't have relationships built. You don't remember people's names. You don't even know where to walk in the building. So they said, focus on areas that can bring professional experience, because then you won't have such a heavy lift learning brand new areas of law and all this. And so my background is foster care. So I'm doing some pieces of legislation around that I'm excited about. The biggest being kinship as foster care prevention. So really strengthening and giving funding so that we can place abused and neglected children more often with their family outside of foster care versus having to go through the foster care system. Right now, most people go through the foster care system because you get more money, and families usually need money if they're taking on an additional child. We don't offer those same resources if you do it outside the foster care system. So this is actually going to be hopefully appropriating around 16 million, which is actually already earmarked in the governor's budget for a program like this. So if we can get them on board with ours, It'll be 16 million to help beef up kinship placements for these children so that they're not interacting with the court system. As high a rate. Okay, that's y'all are testing me. That's good. No, that's where I'm at right now. I get to make amendments. I'm also doing a little collective bargaining piece, but I get to make amendments up till tomorrow. I'll be filing all my bills by Tuesday. I would love to meet in the future. This session is pretty much set, although I can make changes and, I'll be working the bills that I mentioned, but I have a whole new slate of bills I'll need the next year. So hopefully we can start conversations around what y'all want to see out of that. And I really appreciate y'all taking the time to listen to me and have me here.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, you've been on the Hill for 3 days.
Day 4.
So, yeah, awesome.
Did you take off the first?
I'm actually, it doesn't officially start till Tuesday, but it's just so orientation is today, tomorrow. Yeah, so.
You're really orientating.
Yeah.
Right in.
Fire hose.
I wanted to ask something, I guess, to to Mr. Snook about the about the funding for regional transit authorities. And you talked about trying to find money for that.
Right.
How is that going to affect with what's going on with the transit? Bus drivers are trying to get collective bargaining.
Well, bus drivers have collective bargaining. They're trying to work on a contract.
Oh,
The
okay.
issue there, I mean, there actually is an interesting question of whether, as part of the collective bargaining process, whether there is some voice that they need to have in all of this. And I'm not going to try to get into that process, but I will tell you right now, I mean, the dominant concern is that we're hoping that, say, by the year 2026, we will be able to have buses that are essentially double the frequency of what we're running now, because buses once an hour, that's not an adequate service. That we're hoping the buses that are now running every 30 minutes would go to every 15 minutes. The buses that are now running once an hour would go to every 30 minutes. We're also hoping that many of those buses, not all of them to start, but many of them would be battery powered buses. So we would be able to be moving towards a greener bus system. We're not going to be able to go there straight away for a couple of reasons. Number one, because we've still got diesel buses that we are actually legally required to operate for 12 years before we can take them out of service. And so there's some there, we're going to have to keep up. I'll tell you, one of the problems, just a little aside, a few years ago, we bought some hybrid buses. The hybrid buses had severe mechanical problems. We haven't been able to get them on the road often enough to be able to meet the requirements to be able to take them off the road. And that's a federal requirement because most of the money comes from the feds and they've got these regulations. We're trying to get a waiver from them on the hybrids, but that's an issue. Anyway, so 2026, if we were to get this authority, we would have to place the orders for the buses. The buses, most of them would be paid for largely by state and federal funds. But when you snap your fingers and say, we want to buy a bus, you got to wait 2 years. It just takes that long for them to get through the pipeline. So we have to be looking forward. And the idea would be that by 2026, we would have all of the plans worked out. We would have the money in place. As I said, I think the amount that they're talking about needing from the city would be in the order of $10 to $15 million a year. And a larger amount probably from Albemarle County. Although more, I mean, anyway, and one of the schemes that I think we're going to have to be looking at is increasing the number of ways that we allow access to basically university in downtown to people coming from out of town, so they don't have to come into town. So they don't have to rent a parking space, so we don't have to build them a parking space. Building a parking space in a parking garage is a very expensive proposition. If we can avoid that, we would like to. So park and ride lots and things like that on the exterior are gonna be important. And so access and use of transit in the county is going to be important as well. That's a whole different design problem for this CAT system. And it's gonna take a lot of work and it's gonna take a lot of money.
I can speak a little bit about the collective bargaining piece, because that is the piece of legislation that I put in. And I'm sorry, I realized I was only looking over here, so I'm sorry that I haven't even looked this way while I was talking. Of course, now I'm like
been doing the
primed to
same.
doing this, so now I'm gonna be, so John, is trying to unionize with ATU. And they were having issues with whether or not the enabling legislation applied to them, since they're that, not a public, they're a public body, but they have to draw authority from several localities that pay in, and also they take private funds. So that is being clarified. The enabling legislation, I put in a draft to have clarified. The draft came back and only had the definition of a transportation district. There's been a lot of back and forth within the last few days. I actually have a meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30 with Mike Murphy, who's heading up Jaunt right now, to get their take on it. Long story short, though, because I also just talked with Kathy Tran today, she is actually overhauling the collective bargaining ordinance. And so I asked her if she could include the transportation piece in it, and she was willing to do that, including the definitions that we had worked out, and Delegate Anthony is doing it with me. So she's gonna take it into her bill. I am probably still gonna file mine, just because it was something that I worked on and I want to file it, but the intent, and I've got the confirmation from her, is that it's going to be included in the bill that she does. And that would make it so that Jaunt will still be able to make the decision about whether they want to allow their workers to unionize with ATU, but they certainly can't, they wouldn't be able to point to the legislation as the stopping factor for that. That doesn't obviously Charlottesville has unionized their, or, allowed their workers to enter into collective bargaining, so.
And if I may, so that collective bargaining process is actually well underway. In fact, there's been some tentative agreement on some of the non-economic aspects of that contract, and that work continues. And in fact, they'll be reconvening on Monday to continue those talks, and the message from the council and from the city manager is bring us a contract, and obviously all of us are working on that issue. Embrace that directive, and that's certainly the hope, and I'm optimistic that we'll get there.
Yeah, because you're gonna need drivers if you talk about 2026, or or you're gonna need drivers. And are we also talking about expanding? Well, if you're talking about trying to do parks and rides, that means you're gonna have to expand where those.
There are a
buses
whole
go.
lot of things.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to
you'll
do.
have to, that's a lot.
And part of the problems, once if we get the power, and we know we're gonna be having this thing starting, let's say we can start it up in 2026. All of this is gonna take a couple of years of lead time. It's not only the buses that are gonna take the lead time. It's gonna be, if we're gonna have park and ride lots, those are gonna have to be worked out, and all kinds of things have to happen. And there'll be a lot of moving parts, but there's no point in starting all those parts moving until we get this power.
Thank you.
Oh, if I could add just one other comment to something that Jay said. We got a number of comments at the city council meeting on Monday night from people on behalf of the transit union, complaining about the city's position on things. And I just want to make very clear to everybody that city council cannot comment on that. And we will not comment on that. And if we were to comment on issues like that, it may well be an unfair labor practice. So if people say, well, why didn't council, get there and get behind the transit? We can't do that, and we're not gonna. Not because we don't have opinions.
Understood.
Yeah.
Commissioners, anything for Delegate Colson? And anything that she brought up?
Can I make one plug? Reach out to me earlier rather than later. Cause I'm getting a lot of people coming at, well, I'm new, so there's not really, it's not like they've had a lot of time, but a lot of people just, I don't think realize the timeline, so I'm getting like meeting requests for this week. Like, let's talk about some legislation that needs to happen, and it's really feels too late to work a bill well and to get stakeholder feedback and get momentum behind it, so those conversations would be great to start having this summer if you have bills that you're interested in.
Which dovetails with something that I told them earlier too.
Yeah, so we're gonna have our work session in February when we get all of the new commissioners involved as well. And we will definitely work on that and have something to you in the summer.
I'm ready.
Yeah, we'll have some.
The appeals bond in particular, was a piece that I've already got some people behind, so that would be one that we could work
Okay.
Well,
together.
we'll have something to city council
Well,
because we cannot.
right,
Yeah.
okay, we'll have some to city council.
Yeah.
So what council does, over there, get it to you.
Well, and one of the things that I will appreciate having the opportunity
That should-
to talk with Katrina during, sometime other than December. To try to figure out kind of what things might be possible given what has happened, so that when we make our rough judgment about what we think might be politically doable, we're doing it on the basis of current information and not just sort of past gut feelings.
And I will say, just so y'all know, the no politics is weird. And there's like bigger picture things that people are trying to do. So I'll tell you, since, I'm a Democrat, I'm like the Democrat, and the Democratic caucus has a majority. And so caucus leadership's got a pretty strong hand right now, making sure that we get basically our top priority identified priorities through without making so many waves that we have that swing back that we had when we last had the majority. So Speaker-elect Scott has been pretty strong-handed with how we're proceeding, which I think is smart for this session. So that's been kind of, and there's so many freshmen, there's 34 of us. It's the largest class since, I think, Reconstruction. So it's a lot of moving parts.
So,
I just had a question about whether you are playing a role in supporting the constitutional amendment to codify abortion rights.
Yes, absolutely. There are so many women ready to go on that. So I'll hopefully be co-patroning a lot of the bills, and that was one of the top four priorities. Which it's too late for y'all to quiz me. It was whatever our top four House bills were. Like assault bans modifying. Yeah.
Right to vote.
Right to vote for felons is one, and there was one other one, which if y'all stared at me in silence for 2 minutes, I could get it, but I'm not gonna make you look through that.
thank you. And to clarify, people out there, when we do our work session, we will do our work session and get the information to city council. And city council will take it from there. So that we will not be, so that's the way the ordinance is written for the Human Rights Commission. So, okay. Jay?
I was just gonna say, obviously, my role here is much smaller. I support the council in trying to assist from a staff assistant standpoint. Number two, I have to say this, how fortunate, having had an opportunity to work with Katrina for the first 6 months or so of my tenure, how lucky we are to have someone of her intellect and her talent and her passion. And one of the I hope everyone appreciates how good we have it here in Charlottesville with Senator Deeds and Delegate Towson, because we really I had a conversation with her very early, and she has embraced, I think, a number of the issues on council's legislative priorities. Obviously, is incredibly invested in a number of issues of importance to the commission, and I really want to thank you for the fast start that you have as a delegate. What a great service to the council and to the commission and to the city. We're very excited to be having you as our delegate.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. And I'm happy to learn more as we go.
Commissioners?
I'll just be curious to hear where things go in the session.
Yeah, it's exciting time.
Yeah.
And if y'all come to Richmond, let me know. Yeah. Room 901. Guarantee when I'll be in there.
fancy new
but-
building?
Yeah, it is, it is.
Hey, the fancy new
It
building,
is,
right?
please, anyone's welcome, come visit me.
We can buy you a cup of coffee at the coffee bar, right?
I don't know the ethics behind that.
As long as it's less than $25.
And there's a downtown Richmond.
Do we have anyone, any?
May I bring up one thing? So just to say that, I've been doing work with the commission for a while now, and working with the commission to make recommendations to council with regard to the legislative agenda. And I just want to celebrate the fact that I feel like this collaboration has been one of the more successful ones that we've had, in the years that I've been here. So just want to encourage that continued collaboration and to maybe ask you all, if you had any suggestions, in terms of how we proceed this year in terms of timing, or do you want us to reach out to invite you to a meeting? I know you're going to serve on the
I will be,
legislative.
I think Natalie Oshern is
Yep.
gonna be the other one. If around the time, or maybe right after the time that you submit another letter like you did this past September, if you want to sit down with Natalie and me, that would probably make some sense. I'd say I don't want to be in a position of trying to be censoring or discouraging or screening at that point. But it might be useful for everybody. I'll volunteer at Natalie's time too.
All right. Commissioners?
This is great.
Thank you. Do you have any, no public comment? No one's here. And I'm not sure if anyone's online. We have no response to matters of the public. Lily, do you have anything for outreach for us?
I'm good. I will be sending out an email in the next couple of days about upcoming events. There haven't really been any lately, so that's why you haven't gotten any, but we do have a few things coming up, so I will let you know about that.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, next steps. Our next meeting is January the 18th, right here. And we will have, what's this,
88 transition.
88 transition plan, yeah.
88 transition plan. We'll be talking about that on that evening. All right. Anything else we have on that evening?
And elections.
Elections.
Officer elections, so.
All right. Anything else? Thank you again, City Attorney Jay Stroman. Thank you again. City Councilman Mr. Lloyd Snook and Delegate Gina Coulson, thank you for coming. Commissioners, thank you for being here. Appreciate you guys so much again. Happy New Year to you all, and see you guys January 18th. We are adjourned.
That was awesome.
That was great.
You've been busy.
I've been so busy. So busy.
I just want to give you my card, my job, so.
Okay.
I'm in Richmond also, so feel free to. Have you met anyone? Sure.